economy and create jobs. The second one is to restore fiscal responsibility, to move towards a balanced budget by reining in federal spending. And I'm going to show you just the gravity of the situation here in a few moments. I really want to illustrate it because in some cases I think there are some Americans that may not fully realize how serious of a situation we're in right now. And then the third goal is to protect freedoms. To protect our freedoms from threats from abroad, but also from encroachment here at home. Things that we may inadvertently be doing, passing laws that step on our liberties and otherwise change the exceptional way of life. We want to avoid that, and we want to protect your freedoms and our exceptional way of life. So with that said, with regard to goal number one, creating jobs, look, we've got a long way to go. It was 9.8 unemployment on election day. We're down to 8.9% now. We've got a long way to go to get America back to work. But I think for the first time in some time, we're moving in the right direction. I'm encouraged. I will tell you that when I talk about what we're doing, it's predicated on the notion the founders gave us. Occasionally some are upset about our design and our system, but I think really it was a genius design if you think about it. Our founders really trusted no one with absolute power. And because of that, they set up checks and balances. Founders really trusted no one, and you know what? I mean, quite frankly, they wouldn't even trust the new majority in the House with absolute power. So I think that's important to remember. Whether you read the Declaration or the Constitution, or if you read these Federalist Papers, or maybe even the notes from the Constitutional Convention by James Madison, what's clear to me is that if we want to get anything done, we've got to work together. We've got to work together, the House and the Senate and the President. And if we don't work together, nothing gets done. Now the founders set it up initially that way because they thought that would be a good way to keep liberty, keep limited government. But you know what? We still have the same design even if we're trying to move in the other direction. We're trying to go to more limited government right now, but we still got to respect the constitutional design that says the House and Senate and the President have to agree on anything, because if they don't, then nothing gets done. So when we talk about job creation, the thing that's encouraging to me is the fact that the President, in his State of the Union address, he talked about what I have been calling, thanks to your input, calling the impediments to growth. You know, Congress isn't going to pass a law that creates a job. But what we can do is impact the environment. The environment right now is hostile and uncertain to growth. It's hostile. You heard some of the statistics about where New York State stands, but really across our country right now, we have a hostile and uncertain environment to growth because of generally 4 areas. Although certainly the list, if it was exhaustive, would go beyond that. But generally 4 areas. It's taxes, regulation, healthcare costs, and energy costs. So when we address those impediments, what happens is small business then gets more profitability, more bottom line. And when they have more profitability, generally, and we have some small business owners in here today, but when they enjoy more profitability, they recapitalize. That is, they buy new equipment, which helps stimulate the economy, and then they expand and hire new workers. And when they do that, they help us get back to work. They help get Americans back to work. That's on the small business side. And then for families, for American families, when we impact that equation, taxes, regulation, healthcare costs, and energy costs, we have more disposable income. And that's important because you don't want us to have a situation where small business is ready to sell more and Americans aren't ready to buy more. That's on the one side. And then the other side of it is finding markets. So it's not just selling to Americans, but we want to sell our goods to people all across the world. And that's what will help grow the economy. What I'm encouraged is I listened very carefully to the President, and I heard a different speech in January than I heard only a year before. And I would say that's because our President was listening to the results of the election. You know, he's a guy that said that he would not extend the tax cuts for 2.5 years, and then in December, he did. He did. And I think that's a credit to him for having listened to the American people. So when he addressed in the State of the Union address that he wanted to address tax reform, he talked about simplification and corporate tax rates. He talked about regulations. You heard him talk about what he's looking to do as far as removing onerous regulations. You heard him talk about healthcare costs. And he talked about his willingness to repeal the 1099 requirement. And then you heard him talk about energy. And I think also, particularly in the Northeast, an impediment to growth. You think about how much we're all paying right now at the pump. My goodness gracious, $3.67, whatever it is, how much we're paying to heat our homes right now. We can do so much better than that, and we can be independent of foreign sources of energy. So what we're doing, what our office is doing, is we're working across those impediments. You know, we're working with the Ways and Means Committee with regard to tax reform. I do think that's probably about 18 months off. I don't think you'll see that in the first year here. But we're working very aggressively on regulatory reform. I co-sponsored the 1099 repeal. We got that through the House. The Senate also passed a similar version. I'm confident we're going to be able to conference that soon. The President expressed he's willing to sign it. I think we're going to be able to get rid of that 1099 requirement soon. I co-sponsored a bill on, it's called the Reins In Act. This is very important because I believe it would bring more accountability to the bureaucracy. Right now, if a bureaucratic agency attempts to implement a new rule, essentially we have a hard time getting at it. We have a review and comment period. Some of you may have some experience with that. But other than maybe writing a letter to your editor or possibly writing a letter to the bureaucratic agency, we feel very frustrated that our bureaucratic agencies don't respond to us. What the Reins In Act does is it says that anytime a new rule is implemented, $100 million or greater, it's got to go to the Congress for a vote, for an up or down vote. Why that's important is because you have done it, some of the people in the room have done it, you can call my office and express your opinion. And then if you don't like what I've done, you can fire me on the back end. That's accountability. That's what we should have more of. And then I believe it will also provide a second aspect, a deterrent, that when a bureaucratic agency is thinking about implementing a new rule and they get an estimate that goes in excess of $100 million, I think it's less likely to go forward, unless they know that the American people will support it, because the American people support it if their representatives support it. So I've co-sponsored that bill, and I'm looking for that bill to come forward this year. I will tell you that I'm also very active in my communications with the various bureaucratic agencies in town. I've had some of them to my office. I had the regional administrator for the EPA in the office. And I've also been involved in hearings on the Agricultural Committee with the actual chief of the EPA. And let me tell you that in an era where people talk about partisanship, that meeting with the chief administrator for EPA, there was no daylight between Democrats and Republicans. We were, I'll tell you, the EPA minister got a real grilling because of how these regulations are impacting farmers. In the Q&A, we can go into some of the details. But I will tell you, you may have seen some of the reports. In their first month, the new administrator had vacated the exception for spilled milk. Now the administration said, the EPA said they were looking at it, but they vacated. In a period of cynicism in our country, when an agency says they're vacating the exception for spilled milk, because what was at stake was that our government was considering treating spilled milk like spilled oil. Because, of course, milk has animal fat, which is a non-petroleum oil. They were considering, but the problem is if you're a farmer, we have the smartest, the hardest working farmers in the world. Their issue is profitability, and with the specter of having to get buy canisters and to buy containers and to hire a consultant to come forward with a plan and to get the equipment that's required for mitigation. Look, I think we can all agree we don't want to see spilled milk. But should we really treat spilled milk like spilled oil? No, I think that's out of balance. This is what we're going after. This is what we're going after, is out of balance regulations. And there are other examples we can get to in the Q&A. That's what our office is up to right now. Now, I'm getting some great help today. I had an energy advisory panel come together and we met together. I will tell you that this is a bipartisan effort. I've got Democrats, Republicans, Independents. We've got business leaders in this panel. We have union leaders in the panel. What we're looking at is power generation, because we know if we can get access to more energy, we can drive down price. We also know that it's not just about energy generation and production, it's also about transmission. We've got areas in New York where we have significant amount of energy, like particularly out in Niagara Falls, and we can't get it east from west to east, and we can't get it north to south. It gets bottlenecked up, so we're going to have to work the grid. And then also with regard to our consumption of it, we can do better in terms of efficiency and conservation. So what the panel is doing is coming forward with really three broad goals. The first goal is gaining situational awareness on all the programs that are out there right now so that we can communicate that to families and to small businesses, what's available for them for better efficiency.